Tonight. Hopefully this I have a dive bombing fly in my office. Yeah. Why is it? I need to know this. Why, God? Tell me, why do flies decide that they want to attack you?
Well, it's not like they attack. That my guess is you haven't showered recently.
I shower daily.
Okay, first of all, welcome to After Service.
Good morning or evening or whenever it is.
Whenever you're listening, welcome to our podcast. This is the time of year when flies are their friendliest. I can tell you from personal experience when I'm leading worship that it is very difficult to focus on worship. As you are aware, watching Pastor Brian right now, I'm Pastor Joe, by the way, watching Pastor Brian try not to be distracted by the fly. When I am singing a song, playing the guitar, maybe hitting the pedal on the cajon, and there's a fly coming around, it's just one too many things.
Yeah.
There. But I think your question could be really shortened to, God, why flies?
Oh, yeah, no kidding. Why? I mean, I know that they're part of the ecosystem and they help break things down, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. But why?
Yeah.
Why?
There's so many questions that we would like to ask that will be answered for us at some point. His creativity, his extraordinary genius, all those things will go, oh, gosh, of course. That's why.
That's why.
It's like mosquitoes. Yeah. I hate mosquitoes. They love me.
Yeah. Yeah. What's a question you would like to have answered? I have so many I could ask.
Yeah, there's too many. Now, tell me one of yours and then I'll go into my diatribe.
I would love to be able to see, for example, what was happening in the spiritual realm during certain significant historical events.
Mm.
That would be interesting to me. What's happening during World War II, like Normandy or the end of the war? What's happening, during the Kennedy assassination? Is there anything spiritual particularly happening in that moment? It'd be really interesting to me just to pull the blinders back and go, maybe there's something there, or maybe there's not. That would be interesting. So.
Yeah, to see things more completely, and not obviously we'll never see from his perspective, but to have visibility into, outside of our very limited perspectives, to see things outside of time and to see how things join together. There are certain things, and we've talked about this before, that years later you can reflect and go, oh, well, there's God working in that. And thank you, Lord, for working in that. I feel like, assuming that I make the cut, let's say it that way, that all of a sudden I'm going to go, yeah, okay, wow, God, I never saw that. Thank you
Right.
so much. So, I think for me, there isn't a specific question. I mean, there's probably a million questions, but a lot of them it's really going to be like, God, I trust you, and you're going to explain it. It's not for me to understand. However, there are certain catastrophic things that could happen that have not happened in my life that I know would push me to the point of I need an explanation.
Oh, yeah.
I had a moment like that at 26 where my very shallow worldview was being tested, where I had prayers that were like, God, you need to explain yourself. I need to understand this. And then years later I go, okay, I get you.
Yeah.
And I think I've had enough of that outside of, again, catastrophic events. Hello, Mr. Fly.
Yeah. It
That-
landed on my glasses.
Oh, neato.
It was interesting. I mean, like some of the interviews I do for the podcast, where I've had people ask those questions, like Beth Diener with the death of the suicide of her son. She
Yes.
had those kinds of questions, right? And maybe that's in the ballpark of what you were thinking about certain catastrophic events. And but she didn't get an answer. I mean, you got an answer at this point, but sometimes we don't get answers even. God just like this fly. All she got from God was trust me. And like, okay, can we be satisfied with that? Can we live with just that answer? That's a tough question. That's a tough place to be, but sometimes that's where we're at.
We're 8 minutes in. We are talking spiritual things, and not to dominate it with this conversation, but I think you and I could both agree that the loss of our parents, or my parent and your mom and dad, that it's not a why question. It's of course it was going to happen.
Right.
Right. I don't need to know why. I just know that it was inevitable, just like our own passing.
Yeah.
It's when we see something that happens that we go, this is unconscionable.
Right.
And I tend to think about events, and it's specifically, again, catastrophic events rather than curiosity, like, why fly, God? Why fly?
How about this then? Is there a historical figure, maybe a figure for the Bible that you would like to sit down and have a long conversation with?
Oh gosh. Yeah,
that gets you.
certainly. St. Francis of Assisi. I'd love to chat with him. Thomas, I can't remember his last name.
Merton?
No, this goes back. Thomas
Aquinas?
Yeah.
Aquinas.
Yeah. For him, more recently, I'm trying to remember his name. I can see his face. He was, he was German.
Bonhoeffer?
Bonhoeffer. I would love to chat with Bonhoeffer. I mean,
Interesting.
and I think part of it is there are people that lived a sacrificial life in a way that I wonder if I've ever been called to and never responded.
Oh, those are some questions to ask God. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
What were the roads I could have taken? Oh,
Or should have. I mean, I don't. Okay, I'm going to say I don't know if there's a should have, because the whole discussion of predestination, right? That there's no should have. God already, outside of time, sees what I do.
right.
It's just more of, where were there opportunities to live a more sacrificial life that would benefit his people and his kingdom, where I
Yeah.
didn't make it. I mean, I think that's why those three people come to mind immediately, is because
Interesting.
I wonder about where I fall short in terms of sacrificial living for him.
Yeah. I would have gone to, somebody like Paul.
Or Peter. I would love to
Paul
have.
or Peter or one of those. Yeah.
Can you imagine sitting down and having a cup of coffee with Peter? There's actually a book that's written about this.
I know. But can you imagine? There's certain theological questions I'd love to be able to ask one of them. Like, okay, what's your view of predestination? Okay. Can you help me understand? Do we have justification by faith right? Things like that. But beyond that,
I would expect the answer would be, well, at this point, you don't even need to know, because you already do know. By the time you got to
know, but I mean, if I could do now.
Yeah.
But yes. But also Adam would be interesting.
Oh, gosh. Or Jacob.
Oh, yeah.
Or Joseph, of the 12 tribes,
Right.
So what happened when she came in? When she
The
came in.
stories.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Rahab.
goodness.
I'd love to chat with Rahab about how
Yes.
she felt about the soldiers showing up and just choosing to.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's so many extraordinary stories in the Bible where you're just like, okay,
Give me some more
understand
details here.
What was going
Dish.
through your head,
Yes. Yes. Some of those would be absolutely fascinating.
And to tie it into what we're talking about, okay, Ruth, when Naomi told you to go into the dark and then lay at this guy's feet,
Yeah.
were you like, that is insane and no way?
Yeah. How reluctant were you to do that?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Questions like that would be absolutely fascinating, Yeah. Who was Mr. No Name, or literally in the Hebrew,
gosh.
so and so?
All right. So I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Give us our elevator speech, and then I had a specific question that something I wanted to explore from the sermon on Sunday, and realizing we're meandering a bit. Stick with us.
People like it.
Yeah.
All right. So the story was the next part of the story in Ruth, in which Boaz goes into town, and he sets up essentially a town council where he gets the other redeemer and Mr. So-and-so, and then he gathers the witnesses, the 10 witnesses, and there's a little bit of an exchange in which he makes clear to this other guy, Boaz does, you need to make a decision on it. And the shoe drop is that he's going to end up marrying Ruth and providing an heir for Naomi. So, Mr. So-and-so, if you buy this land, you're going to have to give it back, because you're not going to get to keep it. And he doesn't want to do that. And the point is it's costly. Doing the right thing can be costly, and Boaz is quite happy to pay the cost of doing what he needs to do the right thing, to do the loving thing, to do the righteous and godlike thing, and so his name is remembered and the other guy isn't. That's pretty much it.
All right. So one of the things that you chatted about was a certain word, I or you.
Or you, yes.
Right. Could you explain that?
Yes.
Just you don't have to go.
What's going on with that?
You don't have to go into great detail, because this is where I want to press a little bit, but just explain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually I had some conversations about that too. So where did I get this? Okay. So in Bible translations, there's two options. There's two options. You can either go by the more numerous versions of a passage or a phrase or section, or you can do the oldest. And it kind of gets down to a little bit of your philosophical bent on which you think. Do you want to take more of them, but they're newer, or do you want to take the oldest and trust that the oldest versions of it is more accurate? Some translations, most of them, go with the newer, which puts you. The oldest copies of that verse say I, and some of them have I with in parentheses off to the side by a copyist of you. And eventually that became the standard. And I think I was thinking that the reason why they did that, they put you, is because they're thinking this is a levirate marriage, even when it's not, because there's no actual legal requirement by anybody to marry Ruth. And I can prove that textually in the text. You don't need to marry Ruth. Nobody needs to marry Ruth. She knows that. He knows that. And so if you put it I, he's making it clear. It just clarifies the story, in my view, of that what's going on here. It's an issue of, are you willing to make the sacrifice? So what's your pushback?
No, I don't know if it's a pushback. It's more of an exploration.
Yeah.
So, I think about the 7-year cycle, right? That
right.
Every 7 years that it
goes back.
It goes back.
Right.
And so where I kind of fall in line with what you're talking about, it's like, hey, just so you're aware, there is somebody here as part of the line that will receive this land at the end of those 7 years, and that's Ruth, and whoever.
Ruth couldn't inherit it. It had to be a guy.
Well, and whoever her husband happens to be.
Okay,
that's where I was kind of heading. Is so, I'm going to be marrying her, and therefore, if you buy this, then just know that you're going to lose it in 1 to 7 years, depending on where they were at in that cycle. And so, and that's where I'm like, okay, I see what you're talking about, that, hey, by the way, I know you said you do this because you thought, haha, I get it. Woo, I win. But you're not. I mean, just be aware that if you buy this, then it's going to come back. And I almost feel like he's doing the guy a favor in saying, you should probably be aware that, if you're thinking that this becomes part of you get to own this in perpetuity, if I'm talking contractually, it's not going to work out that way. Right.
Exactly. You got it.
Now, the thing that I was thrown off by is the idea that the first bit was, if it was you, that you'd have to marry Ruth, and you've already kind of unwound that, is that because she is effectively from another country, and with the racism and stuff that was there, it was like, if the idea was it was you have to marry her, if it was levirate as you were describing it, then it would be, oh, there's no way I'm going to marry her, because think of the scandal, think of all the,
and that's a piece of it too. Sure.
Yeah. And even if it wasn't you, but what's going through Mr. No Name's mind is, the only way in this case for me to hold on to this land is if I marry her.
Right.
There's no way that I'm going to do that.
Right.
And I just really think that kind of all those cultural influences on this decision are really kind of extraordinary. It did, by the way, the fly landed on the microphone just a moment ago. It was pretty cool. For those of you who are watching on YouTube or,
I'm trying to ignore
Facebook, you can just rewind like 15, 25 seconds and, oh, it's on your shirt now. Oh, this is, where's the fly now? Yeah, anyway. So no, I wondered kind of as I was considering that, how much kind of the cultural racism played into all of that.
Right.
And I do appreciate kind of the qualification that nobody had to marry Ruth. It wasn't a requirement. And I don't know that that Mr. No Name is necessarily, he's just a part of the culture. He is just responding to the current culture.
Yeah.
But what it points out is, time of the judges, this is not a good culture.
Right.
And I love the accountability of the meeting. We're all getting together. We're all talking. You're all hearing what I have to say. There's no question. Nobody's being sneaky or anything. It's
No, there's
all
no
out in the
sneakiness.
open. I love that.
Mhm.
It's like if you're going to be a selfish jerk or fall in alignment with the selfish jerk culture of that time, everybody here is going to know it. And
Yep.
I think that makes what Boaz does so much more extraordinary. And also, I mean, you just can't help but see how creative and loving God is when you see he's like, you two are going to be connected, and all these things are going to fall into place. And I got it covered. I know the romantic part of me sees that and goes, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Had it all figured out. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. It doesn't, the you or I doesn't fundamentally change the story. It doesn't change a doctrine, because I've talked about how there are textual variants there, but they don't really change a doctrine. You can kind of get to that place that clearly he's being selfish without the you versus I. I just think the I makes it clearer, which is why I went with it. But they exist. Textual variants, they're all over the place, which is okay. Whoa.
What happened?
Oh, my whole screen went black for a moment.
Oh, I thought
So,
maybe.
anyways,
thought
I
maybe
just
the
don't want
fly
people to be
landed and
worked
said,
up
"Hey."
about that. I just don't want people to be worked up about, oh
Yeah.
no, there's variations in the Bible. Well, yes, and most of the time, translators do a pretty good job in picking through what is clearly there or most likely there, and none of them really make a huge difference. There's very, very few, if any, that make any kind of difference at all. So.
I really appreciated how you explained that what Mr. No Name was doing was a perfectly acceptable response in that culture,
Yeah.
right? That as we're thinking about what our current culture is, whether it is secular culture or Christian culture, that, if you take the extra step to make sure you're in alignment with Christ's teachings, then you may find yourself doing something that is counter to secular culture or Christian culture.
Or
Like
Christian culture.
Right? You
might get a lot of flack for it.
That's right.
I'm
yeah.
sure Boaz there was at least some people who were not happy that he married a Moabite.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. And today, by doing, we know this, and our friend Ross talks about this. Ross King.
Yes, yeah.
If you try to live truly like Jesus in this culture, Christians might be some of your loudest people who are going to complain.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to tell you, I had an unexpected conversation today with a longtime friend, not somebody that you know, but somebody that is an atheist. And he asked me, about some of these things about our culture, and both secular and Christian culture, and his interactions with people who are Christian, and that he respects people who are Christian and work hard to live as Christ teaches, even if he doesn't believe it, but he understands the value in doing that. But he also, I wouldn't say he takes joy, but he is not afraid to say, the discourse that you're having right now in this environment, he says, what would Jesus do? And then all of a sudden the people disappear, and he knows that I'm Christian. He knows how important my faith is. And he's very respectful of that. But he's also he doesn't understand, how Christian culture seems to say you can be a turd. And he also called out people outside of that, and how they can be exactly the same way. And that I think that finding the nuance in their That's what Boaz is about, is
Yeah.
what is God calling me to do in this situation? And
Yeah.
he shows integrity in bringing it to the public square,
Yep.
right? He could have just avoided that. Probably nobody would have called him on it,
Nope.
but he did it. So he demonstrated integrity, but he was also countercultural in choosing to marry a Moabite woman, and sacrificing financially and culturally a lot of what he had there. But anyway, I wanted to share that because it was a conversation this morning, and it just felt like it fell in line with our conversation.
Yeah, it's discouraging when you see Christians act, as you put it, and it's always a shock to me when I see Christians act like that. It always is. I mean, because generally I don't surround myself with people like that at all. I know they exist, and once in a while I run into them, and I see them on the internet, and it's just, I don't know.
It can be discouraging.
Yeah, I expect non-Christians to not act nice and not act Christ-like in a good way, but Christians should do better. And so it's just discouraging, and before I point too many fingers at that, then, I know there's lots of other ways, and even in my own life, I don't live very Christ-like. That's why it would be an interesting conversation to bring it all the way back to the beginning with someone like a Paul. What would he be? What would his critique be of my faith, right? And how how we're living it.
Yeah.
That would be a very interesting perspective,
If I were to guess, I would say you would be greeted with a lot of grace, because it's 2,000 years later. And all of the things that have occurred since he walked on this earth and now, and we're human, we're making mistakes. These things we're going to interpret something wrong, and even if we understand it perfectly, we're still going to screw up from time to time.
Yeah.
But the fact that you live with the intention of understanding, and I was but it kind of goes back to the faith and works kind of question, that if you believe, then your works are going to be a natural extension of your faith, but not always. You're going to screw up in the same way that your intention is to follow Christ accurately, and you're going to screw up. C.S. Lewis, said it very well, and I don't have the quote, but basically that we are following Christ to the best of our understanding.
Yeah, and I was thinking more along the lines of just how we express our faith in general. What would he think of how we do Sunday mornings? How would he?
What do you think about
that kind of
modern
stuff,
worship
right?
music?
I mean, really fundamental assumptions about what does it mean to live like a Christian.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. How would he support pastors being paid? I mean, what would he? I mean, there's. I mean, some of these I think I could guess based on what the scripture says, but still, it would be just interesting. Would he look at our lives and our culture and go, you are an incredibly sexualized culture,
Like, why
far
is it
more
so
than us.
important that you wear those $150 blue jeans as a
Things
pastor?
like those kind of little things. I'm like,
Yeah.
just the culture shock
Yeah.
that I think he would have. That's kind of, it just would be an interesting, and obviously it's a hypothetical question, but it'd be interesting.
It will
Yeah.
be interesting, because
And it will be.
It's going to happen. And I look forward to you and I together sitting at a table with Peter and Paul and going, oh gosh, I never even thought about it that way. See, Brian, look how wrong you were.
Yep. It's not the question of what we got wrong, but how much of it.
That's right. It's not if, it's what. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what. It's what. What did we get wrong? What did we get wrong about end times or soteriology or ecclesia? All of it. Yeah.
You thought it meant that? Oh, Brian.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. That's gonna happen. And all of us people there who were so sure we were right, we're gonna go, maybe not.
I know your intentions were good, but you were so far off.
Well, thanks for joining us, and hope you enjoyed our conversation tonight. Next week, we're going to be taking a week off. I'm going to be interviewing Jen next week.
All right,
and
good.
that'll be an interesting. It's already pre-recorded, but it was a fascinating conversation, and I'm looking forward to letting you all get to hear it. So.
And in the meantime, I will be. But when you see me next, I will have run Hood to Coast my 8th time, and if I'm still alive, I should be okay.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. All right. You guys have a great night, and we will talk to you later.
Take care.